get started. It looks like a lot of folks have joined. Again, keep your cameras off. We're going to ask you all to hold your questions to the end. You can either type your question and put it in the chat when we ask for questions, or you can unmute yourself and ask your question then. The reason why we're asking everyone to hold their questions to the end, we might get to your question throughout the presentation, so wait to the end of the presentation. And also, it's really hard for us to present and answer questions, even if it's just one of us talking, because we both are kind of engaged and paying attention to jump in. So just hold your questions. Promise you, we're going to have 30 minutes to answer all the questions you guys have, so plenty of time. So welcome to this spring program training. We hope you guys learn a lot and get ready to have a great semester. Also, I welcome you all back. Hopefully you all are safe and your families are safe over winter break. And if unfortunately you're caught COVID, the Omicron variant, hope your symptoms were light and you're on your way to recovery. Same thing for your family and your friends. My name is Roderick Wilson, or Rod. I'm an assistant director. And as assistant director in the Center for Student Involvement, I oversee student clubs and organizations. In my portfolio, I have student media, the Graduate Leadership Council. I also work closely with your advisors, so faculty advisors. I send quarterly emails out to them to get them updates and keep them abreast of what's happening. They will also get information about this presentation. And I also handle club concerns or issues. Pass it over to Jordan.
Hi, folks. So good to have you on the call today and hope that you were able to rest over winter break. My name's Jordan, she, her. I am the other assistant director in the office, one of the other assistant directors in the office. And so under my purview, I work with the AU Club Council, all of our graduate school councils, you all when you're doing complex events, and then students as you're looking to start new clubs on campus under the Center for Student Involvement. So glad to have you here and hope that you learn a lot today.
Just a quick reminder, the information we're going to go over today is in the context of student club and organizations with events. So everything we're going to talk about today is programming and events. We might touch on a couple of nuances when it comes to finances and simple purchase requests. But this right here is just concentrating on you all planning your events and programming for the semester. All right. Today's agenda, we're going to cover programming basics, CSI guidelines, best practices, and timeline. So programming basics, just give you guys kind of the updates that are happening this spring, the CSI guidelines that we give you all for travel and food and external guests. Best practices is basically going to cover some of the things that came up last semester that we think you all should be aware of and know as you continue your year of programming. And the last thing is the timeline. So Jordan will go in detail of like submissions on Engage and talking to AUCC, talking to your advisor, having a budget request versus a purchase request, and how that all falls into the programming timelines. Okay, here's the spring updates. So we're gonna have 3-week timeline and a 5-week timeline. And here's the benefit. We switched the original 5-week timeline that you all had in the fall. We dropped it to 3. So this means anything that you do, if you're buying food, is now 3 weeks timeline. If you're even buying something as simple as just snacks for your event, that is now 3-week timeline. And again, this is only for events. So if you are buying something for an event for a community building initiative, or just a regular event that you're having with your club, this is what you're purchasing it for. So if you're buying just t-shirts, a simple request for a t-shirt, and you're just having that given out to your orgs in a general body meeting, that's a different process. This is only pertaining to purchasing items for events. The complex events is the 5-week timeline, and we kind of beefed that up for all contracts. So anything that needs to be signed, paperwork, external guests, anytime you're working with a vendor off campus, So anytime, basically, if you're working with a third party that is not within CSI or a student organization, another student organization, you're going to have to use the 5-week timeline. And Jordan's going to go through in detail on the difference between the 3 and the 5 week in a little bit. Meetings can be in person. So general body meetings can now be in person. I'll say that again. General body meetings can be in person. We ask that you don't have to put that into EMS unless you are wanting to promote your general body meeting. So if you're using it for recruitment purposes and you want that engaged, so when students search for organizations, they can see your event, that's fine. But any general body meetings do not have to go and engage. And that also goes for our performing art groups. So a lot of the dance groups, a cappella, theater groups, you all do rehearsals and practices. Those do not have to go and engage. You can go reach out to Catson or AU Rec Fit or athletics, use their space directly. You don't have to come to us to ask. So general body meetings, rehearsals and practices can be in person. External guests to be determined. We're going to go through some details about what this looks like. We don't have the answer. CSI doesn't have it. The university doesn't have it yet. They're still kind of formulating that information if it's going to allow external guests on campus. And we will go over external guests versus external vendors a little bit later. But as of now, external guests, campus visitors are not allowed to be on campus. Food is allowed in all events. So any style of food, if you guys are doing a buffet, last year we said no buffet just for COVID reasons. This year, feel free to have a buffet style, have pizza. The one caveat we'll advise you all is we're giving you guys a big open gate to go out and program and be with each other, but you might go to, let's say, SIS, and they might have a little bit more restriction when it comes to COVID and what type of food they allow in their building. So just know that you're allowed to have food. It's a student organization in Mary Graydon. But if you're trying to have a certain type of event in SIS, they might have different rules for different type of food. So when you do all your event programming stuff, you will get that information and you will have that information so you can better plan. Masks are still in place, so wear your mask in the building, cover your nose. You needs to be worn at all times unless you're drinking or eating. So the only exception is when you're drinking or leaving. The other caveat I'll give you, if you're a performing group, social, maybe just an art group or an a cappella group, when you're on stage performing, you do not have to wear your mask. So when you're on stage performing as an art group or a cappella group, or you're a dance group or a social group that does some type of performance, when you're on stage indoors, you don't have to wear your mask. When you step off stage or go backstage, please put your mask back on. That goes the same thing with groups of 25 or more outside. That's still in place of wearing your mask. I think I covered it all. Jordan, anything I missed? Perfect.
Awesome. So now we're going to go through some programming basics. So for my leaders who attended this in August, much of the information is still the same. Most of the changes Rod just went through, but this is more so for any student leaders who transitioned this past winter break and you're now a new student leader or new on exec board, or for my new clubs and organizations that just got recognized and this is your first semester being active. So take heed to the information. So we're going to talk about the difference between community building initiatives, what that looks like, what the timeline looks like, and then what exactly is a complex event. All right, so complex events are events defined by meeting one or more of the following criteria. So if your event meets just one of this criteria that I'm going to talk through in a second, then it is a complex event. And so the first one is if there are any sort of contracts or contracted services. Contracts do need to be signed and they are not signed by our office. And so we do have a timeline in place because they have to go through other campus departments to make sure that those things can be paid and be signed by the appropriate individuals. And so any sort of service that needs a contract, if you're doing a paid speaker, if you are getting catering or something that requires a contract, that is going to be a complex event, and it is going to require a 5-week minimum submission timeline so that we can have additional conversations and get you on the right track. Same thing with external vendors. Any service or vendor that is not from AU, so is not internal, and they're coming from an off-campus third party, is generally going to be a contract anyway, but also their external vendor. So for I know a lot of my groups, my multicultural groups do larger scale events in the spring semester, so like pageants and things like that. So if you're trying to get from a third party vendor, like a stage built, microphones, tables, or something like that, generally those are all from a third party vendor, and it's going to be complex. AU special event services. So really this is for our, speaking directly for our performance-based groups, because I know a lot of groups like to do outside performances, theater groups, things like that. And so that does require electricity, which is not free, unfortunately. We do have to pay electrician from Tufix to give you the electricity for those types of events. And so that also requires more time to make sure that Tufix is going to be available on the day that you want them, because they're not just sitting around on a Saturday waiting to be used. They have to actually be scheduled and make sure that they come in for your specific event. Off campus, I really want to make sure that I'm clear about this. So it's complex only if it's hosted off campus, not held. So I'll give you a really good example. So say Happiest Club wants to go monumenting at night, which means that they just go, they're taking their members and they're going to the monuments and going to go check them out. I consider that to be held off campus. You're not purchasing anything. There are no contracts. Generally people take, the metro or something. So like that's held off campus. That would be a simple community building initiative. Versus if it's hosted off campus, a good example of this is like if you're going to a museum and you're renting out a room so you can have a dedicated space there for your event. You're inviting people, you're saying, hey, we have this room secured, blah, 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 blah. Generally, that's going to be a contract, but also it's actually going to be hosted off campus. You have specific rules you have to follow because you are having an official hosted space. And so that's a pretty good range for you to think about it like that, is if you're thinking about doing something off campus, like, is this simple enough, or is it, if it has any sort of complexity with off campus, it's probably complex. So think about it like that. And then our last criteria is if it is considered controversial. And so these are events that are designed to increase attention and community advocacy to increase the visibility of an issue. And so I know last semester we had a lot of clubs saying, hey, everything we do is considered controversial. Everything doesn't need to be 5 weeks. Correct. If you're just having a tea talk and you're talking about like a supercharged subject, that is not something that we consider controversial. If you are bringing a speaker onto campus who has been in the media for saying things or for being considered controversial, and you'll know if they're considered controversial, that'll be a conversation of with us with Complex of how do we safely have this event? How do we make sure that your program is successful? And we have those conversations and we get the right parties involved for those type of things. So if it meets any one of these criteria, it is complex. All right, and so Jen, just a definition, complex events, any official club hosted programming that's open to the AU community that meets any one of the complex event criteria that's talked about. This does require an event submission on Engage, and it needs to be submitted at least 5 weeks in advance. So the timeline is the minimum. We always suggest if you know you want to do something, like say you want to do something now in April and you already feel ready to submit, go ahead and submit and we can have those conversations. But the minimum is 5 weeks. These events can be in-person, hybrid, or virtual. I'll go through that in a second. And then just some examples of things that we consider complex. If you're having a Tiny Desk concert with a DC performer, that would be a contract because you'll probably be paying the DC performer. So that would be a contract. Any sort of paid speaker, or like I was saying, a lot of groups like to do pageants and balls and things like that. That would be all complex. The complex event type, so just the same as last semester, you can still do fully virtual programming if you would like. If it meets any of the criteria, it will be complex. A lot of folks did hybrid programming this past semester, and so we suggest y'all keep that up. That was really successful. So say you have a paid speaker and they're virtual, and then you have a whole bunch of folks, students in a room together watching the speaker on the screen. Feel free to do that type of programming, continuing into the spring semester. And then if you just want to do fully in-person programming, that is also allowed as well. All right, so our community building initiatives. So this is something that we introduced last semester that has been very successful for you all, and you all took to it really well, so we wanted to continue it. So that's any club hosted programming that does not meet the complex event criteria. And so really anything that you're doing, like if you're doing something on campus and you're just doing a tea talk, not getting a paid speaker, no contracts, you just want to buy some Domino's pizza and some drinks, that would be a community building initiative. Very simple. We do have a 3-week timeline for that, like Rod was saying, a minimum. So you have to submit it on Engage at least 3 weeks in advance. And this is to ensure that especially if you're buying anything, that you have enough time to, one, request the funding from AUCC if you're an AUCC group, and then 2, have your items delivered or work with CSI Finance to make sure that they can purchase with in time. And so that's why we have the 3 weeks timeline for that, because AUCC generally has about a 1-week turnaround for you to know if you're going to get the funding or not. And then we need about 2 weeks to get your appointment with CSI Finance and get your things ordered and delivered. And just some examples: welcome back kickback, open dialogue, those sort of things are simple community building initiatives. And then just to recap, feel free to screenshot this slide if you would like. Community building initiatives, 3-week timeline, virtual, hybrid, or in person, can include simple purchasing. And then you do have to submit on Engage. Complex events, 5-week timeline. If it meets any one or more of the criteria, it's complex, and then you have to submit on Engage as well. But it's always good, and the good thing about this system that we have, I want to mention, is that when you submit on Engage, say like you're not fully ready to have the event yet, or you haven't had all the details figured out, Rod and I guide you through that process. So that's why we want you to submit, so that we make sure that you have all your ducks in a row so that you can have a successful event. So, all right.
CSI guidelines. Let's try that again. So first off, I'm going to talk to you guys about travel. So student organization travel can happen this semester. Just to recap what this includes any travel outside of the DMV area. So when I say that, I mean the general DMV area. Baltimore is considered outside the DMV area. So that's where we ask you all to submit things on Engage. So there's a couple forms I'm going to talk about, but as soon as we catch it, we can help advise you and get you to the right place. A couple of examples last year is an organization reached out to travel, but after talking to them, it was within DMV. It really didn't have to go through the risk management process. So we're able to just approve that as an off-campus event. But just remember, if you're traveling outside the DMV as a student organization, it's considered student organizational travel. A day trip is still considered, and also an overnight trip. So multiple nights staying somewhere is considered student org travel. There's a 5-week timeline minimum for this, and the reason is because there's a lot of paperwork, as you can imagine. The first paperwork is the travel itinerary form, which is on Engage. That is for our office, for our own reference, for student organization historical record keeping of who travels, when they travel, and where they went. But there also is a risk management and safety services. Their office also has 2 forms. So the first form is a group domestic travel form, and the next one is a travel waiver form. The travel waiver form right now, every person that travels has to fill out the travel waiver. So you have to make sure you have everyone that's going to travel fill out that form. But the domestic travel form and the Engage form, only 1 form per group submission. Again, all these should be done at the same time because I review the engage form for travel for student organization, and then the risk management office looks at their forms, and then me and my counterpart, not even my counterpart, someone above me in risk management tells me, yes, we approve this. And what they do is research on the conference. So they go in detail of saying, hey, this group is traveling to New York City. New York City has high cases of coronavirus, or this is an unsafe place to travel. We can allow student organizations to travel under the umbrella of student organizations, or students to travel under the umbrella of student organizations. So again, 5-week timeline because there's a lot of paperwork. And even after all that's submitted, you have to get approval from AUCC if you're under AUCC, if you're using your own general funds from your own account through just a direct purchase request. There still is a lot of ordering that CSI Finance has to go through of booking travel and things like that. And so my best bet is always to do it really early, 6 weeks out, but 5 week is definitely the minimum so we can take care of all of those nuances there. And it's a very much easy process once you fill out the forms. It's just one meeting with me, and then everything else is communicated over email. Sorry. One last thing I forgot to mention. There will be a new 3-day before you travel testing requirement. So everyone who's travels needs to do a COVID test on campus 2 days before at least. And then when you return within 3 days returning. And that's something we advise you all to do just for safety. So you know, you can contact trace, know when you're coming back for the safety of our community. There's nothing formalized, but I'm going to highly suggest you guys, and I'm going to put that in all my communications, that you please get tested before traveling and when you return. There you go. Sorry, Jordan.
All good. All right, food. So we touched on this earlier, but food must follow the AU campus events food services policy. Best practices really for around food for you all is making sure that you're aware of the guidelines for the event space, as Rod mentioned earlier. So some event spaces may say no food in the building. And so that would be a decision for you all. If you really want to have food at the event, either you can have it at a different location, or you just won't have food at the event because you really want to be in Catson or say something like that. So just making sure that when you book a space via EMS that you know, or that you're aware of the individual spaces guidelines concerning food at your event. You can't have buffet style food. So I know a lot of my multicultural groups like to order from similar places every year. So feel free, have fun, save me a plate. Individually wrapped, prepackaged as first option. Always think about that as first option because we are still in a pandemic. And so thinking just about safety, if is an event that doesn't need buffet style and you just want some chips and some cookies or something, think about individually wrapped or prepackaged as your first option. You do have the option to use the AU student catering menu. They have a variety of things. They don't have everything, but they do have a cool variety of things, and you can use them, especially if you want to have like a sort of fine dining sort of event or program. And so when you submit on Engage and say, hey, we want to use this AU student catering, Rod and I will direct you to the appropriate sources to make sure that you can get that secured. And then lastly, best practice is just really stick with what you know. And so if you're an organization that's been doing similar events and using similar restaurants or food places for a year or two now, stick with what you know. You already have a relationship built with those restaurants or with those owners. And don't go switching up now just because we are in a pandemic and things are changing every second and every moment. So I always say stick with what you know. It'll make your life easier and save a headache for all parties involved. So things to think about. All right, external guests. So we also touched on this earlier. So really, external guests is TBD right now. It's currently pending for the semester. We don't have any answers for you, and I'm very sorry that we don't. But right now we're waiting on the university if external guests are going to be allowed. If they are going to be allowed on campus, there will be a process to make sure that you all are having RSVPs for whoever is going to be planning to attend your events. And there most likely will be a form for any external guests to complete to make sure that they're in alignment with AU health and safety guidelines. We do not have that form. We do not know anything else than what we're telling you right now, because I know a lot of folks have been asking about that. But when we do find out, we will make sure that we communicate specific steps to all of our organizations so that you know, so that you can plan accordingly for your events later on. Usually the way that we communicate with you all is through a monthly newsletter. But I also send, whenever I have updates to any specific information, I send news blasts to whoever is listed as your primary contact on Engage. So make sure that that person is good at checking email and good at staying informed, because it doesn't go to everybody in the organization and it doesn't go to your whole e-board. It will only go to that person. So make sure that that person is well informed, okay? Really best practices surrounding your events where you're considering having external guests. Make sure that you have multiple plans and formats, okay? So have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. So plan A is great. It's a free-for-all. Anybody can come on campus, great, we can have our ideal event. Plan B, no people on campus, no external guests on campus. And you have to do something hybrid where the external guest is, you know, on a screen or they're virtual or something like that. So making sure that you have multiple plans so that your events can still happen. It's just, it may not happen in the way that you ideally would like, just based off of guidelines with COVID and things like that. So just making sure that you have backup plans, okay? All right, and off-campus events, I'm not going to harp on this because I already talked about it, or we already talked about it, but any off-campus events, you have to follow AU health and safety guidelines, so please wear your mask, and then follow CSI event guidelines. For DC specific, so if you're looking at doing an off-campus event where your organization is going to like a restaurant or something, DC does now have a proof of vaccine requirement for folks who want to eat in at places. So just make sure that you're aware and familiar of DC guidance so that when you get there, you can have the best event you can have possible. If you have questions about event safety or event guidance, please let us know, CSI, and we'll talk to you when you submit your event on Engage, and we'll get you secured and make sure that you're feeling comfortable. And then lastly, really just use our best judgment. And we say our because say like Happiest Club is having an event and we walk into the event, would you feel some type of way if your CSI advisor walked into the event and you were like, I know, we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. So just make sure that you're using our best judgment so that you can have a safe event, and that, you know, you can get all of you want to get out of involvement in programming and being a part of a student organization. So just make sure that you're facilitating safe spaces. All right, co-sponsorship. So this is a big thing for this semester, we know. So co-sponsorships are commitments from organizations to partially handle the cost, management, and or marketing of the event. And so I know with a lot of, like I was mentioning earlier, spring semester is the time where a lot of clubs have their larger events, where there are multiple co-sponsors and things like that. Biggest thing that you want to make sure that you're paying attention to when you're doing your initial planning is asking the question, who is the owner of the event, okay? Who is the owner of the event? This should only be one club or one organization, all right? And the reason that we're saying this is because there are, depending on what club you are, there are different, there's a different process to follow based off of which governance board you are under. So a really good example of this is say Happiest Club is having a speaker and they are going to get some sort of funding and marketing support from KPU, so Kennedy Political Union. If Happiest Club is the owner who is under AUCC, we're going to follow AUCC's process here in CSI when you submit your event on Engage, okay? On the flip side, if KPU is having a speaker and they ask Happiest Club to co-sponsor, you know, a little $200 or something, KPU is going to be the owner and we're going to follow KPU's process for programming and events, okay? So just make sure that you ask that crucial question, and then when you put your event in Engage, we'll know exactly which process to follow, and we can make sure that we're having the appropriate conversations and following the appropriate timelines, okay? All right, back to Rod.
All right, folks, best practices. Again, these are the things that we've noticed that came up last semester. They come up a lot of times, even previous semesters before last fall. So first thing is movie night. You have to get a license to screen movie rights on campus. It's just a law in general across the country. So remember that you can't just hop in a room and watch Finding Nemo. You actually need to reserve the rights of that movie. So if you're doing something and you're under AUCC, you have to do a budget request to research the license. And usually when you put in to engage, we want to have a movie night. We can send you I forgot, they slipped my mind right now, but the company that works with college campuses a lot, and it's very easy to get licensed and pay for it so you can screen the movie. It's not like they ship the movie to you sometimes. It's just giving you the rights if you already have it to stream it online, since everything in the streaming network. But remember, movie nights are not as simple as you think they are, because you have to have the rights to stream movies on campus. So anything you do as a student organization is considered obviously an organization that can be sued. So remember that we want you guys to be safe. If you're Jordan, Mary, and Rod go and hang out and watch a movie in my residence hall, that's cool, because we're just a couple friends. But if we decide CSI is going to host a movie night, we have to buy the rights to the movie. Indoor, outdoor performances. This comes up a lot with performing groups, but even some of our bigger programming groups. Everybody from student government down to the happiest club. Everyone wants to do an event outside, but it's really important that you guys know that you have to go through a couple avenues. TwoFix, AV, we didn't put AV on here, but AV is audio and visual. If you're gonna have some type of music playing, TwoFix usually does tables and chairs. But one thing I wanna harp on with TwoFix is that TwoFix has limited supplies. They don't have a lot of chairs or tables. I think they have like 10 tables total with the university. Blows my mind too. So really, if you're going to host a huge event with a huge tent and you want a staging, even the university doesn't have a stage they have one stage that's hard to move and manage. So you might have to do a third party. So if you really are thinking about hosting a big event in the quad with a tent and tables and chairs, you're going to have to outsource those with a third party vendor to come in and bring those in. So we really want you guys to think about that as not just simple. And the electrician Jordan talked about earlier, the electrician is about $40 an hour, because electricity is not free. So you're paying for that person's service. And usually it's one person, and a lot of people try to have events on Saturdays. And is he available to come on campus on a Saturday? He might be out with his wife and kids. I'm just using heteronormative stuff right now, but they might be out with their family and friends, and so you might not have time to do that. So we also got to think about that when we're requesting some of these services. In venue setup, obviously that's really important, because University Center usually handles some of these setups, and they're going to ask you really detailed questions in your complex meeting, because usually a complex meeting is Jordan or myself with University Center and the leaders of that student organization who's planning the event. And they're going to ask very detailed questions of like, how do you want the table set up? How do you see the stage? Who's going to bring in the stage? Where is it going to be housed? So a lot of detail that goes into that. Occasional dinner catering contracts, even if you're having someone off campus versus having AU catering, those catering contracts are very detailed and intense at times. So please, please, please make sure that you put things into Engage in time. So the CSI advisors with the CSI finance team can get some of these contracts done. It's just not as simple ordering a Chipotle order, right? If you're doing an actual contract with catering, it's a lot more detailed than just calling the phone and being like, I want 1,500 burritos. Unpaid speaker. These are for any of you all who have a speaker that is not an AU faculty member that's coming virtually or in person to speak to your groups, we ask that you fill out the guest speaker agreement. It's very simple. It doesn't take much. It's not a 5-week timeline. It's only a 3-week timeline if they're not getting paid. So any unpaid speaker, we need that form. And usually Jordan or myself, we're communicating with students. Organizations here tonight who have done this last semester know that we attach it to the engaged conversation, that we have the thread, and then you send it over to the speaker. They sign it. You can attach it back to that thread, or you can email it directly back to Jordan or myself for our records. I think that's it for this one. Again, I won't harp on this. AU Catering and 2Fix. The only thing I will keep saying about this, that if you're an AUCC club and you have to do a budget request before you do a purchase request, it's really important that you start with the timeline early, in 3 weeks, even 4 weeks out, or 2Fixes or 5 weeks out, only because it takes time for you to get that money. And myself or Jordan, also Mary, who's on the call, CSI finance team, we can't do anything with you in terms of that contract or that 2Fix or catering order until we know you have money in the system. So if you're an organization that has your own funds and you're just doing a direct purchase request, those steps can be a little bit easier. But if you're accessing funds from AUCC with that budget request and then putting a purchase request, so 2 steps, make sure you get that stuff in early because it takes time. And I would say AU Catering is working out a lot of kinks with a lot of new leadership. And so our office tries to work well with them, but we have done personal things with them. And some of the stuff that we ordered from them never happened. We didn't have an order that came in one time. So it's really important that we get these conversations started early and that you all trust us to navigate this. And the last thing I would say is, with AU Catering, they do not talk to students directly. So you have to go through CSI to talk to AU Catering. So that's a lot more steps I want you guys to be aware of as you think about your programming. Same thing with 2Fix. You can talk to 2Fix sometimes about certain orders, but they want to know how they're getting paid. And that has to go through CSI because we have to give them certain budget line item numbers so that we can transfer the money internally. So it's not just an easy like, oh, I'm going to take a debit card and swipe the card. It takes a lot of steps and numbers. Still me. Working with EMS in the University Center. So EMS is the event management system, and UC is the University Center, which is over most of the scheduling on campus. And they also have great relationship with other schedulers on campus. So when I say schedulers, I mean coordinators that work within SIS and CATSN and some of these other departments we've been mentioning in this presentation. The University Center has a great relationship with them. So EMS is the one-stop shop to kind of get your spacing requirement or your spacing needs met. The requester and event details, we have one person from your organization that is allowed to have access to EMS. That person in Engage says 25 live, meaning we still haven't transferred that over yet, but it's going to be EMS. So that person, whoever's listed on in your organization, that's the person that we have down as the EMS scheduler. Really important, Engage and EMS are not sister networks, so it takes people to take a copy of that or export an Excel sheet and send that over to the other people to put it into EMS. So the thing we'll ask for you all to do, folks who are new, who may have leadership transitions since the fall, Jordan sent in her last newsletter a form that you all can just click and fill out, and that goes directly to EMS to update your information. But we ask you all to also update it in Engage. So you have to do both, update it in Engage and update to that new EMS form that's on the newsletter Jordan sent out earlier in the week or last week. Know your setup and event needs and timeline. Again, University Center are awesome. And we all sit down in that meeting. Folks who are on this call now who had calls with complex meeting with University Center and CSI know that they're very detailed, that they communicate everything with us, and we're constantly talking to Ashley and Jordan, and any of the other event schedulers over in that team, on student organizations needs and things like that. So we are communicating on the back end, but we have to have you all know your setup and what you want. Jordan and I cannot speak for you because we're not students, but we're there to give you guys some support with advising and telling you if you have funds or what is actually needed in the timeline. Again, communication is key. Putting things in early is key. Again, we might not get to it right away, but we see it in our queue, we flag it, and we make sure that it's within the same timeline. And we also are human. So we say, this is our timeline. You say no, we double check the dates. We always see that, oh, maybe, yes, I see that you put it in time. Let's get this done. So just work with us and be patient and know that there's literally, since we've been sitting here, I've been getting requests in my inbox for programming. So like, can't get to that right now, but when we get to it, we promise we will make sure your event is successful.
Alrighty, so just a few finance updates and reminders that the finance team wanted us to share with you all. So the first one that you all should be aware of already, purchase requests are going to start being reviewed on the 24th. For that, since we are fully virtual this month of January, so we haven't been in the office, so we can't get any deliveries or anything, so they are going to start being reviewed on the 24th. Some reminders for our folks, and also let me say a caveat for my new organizations who probably don't know what I'm talking about yet. So in a second, I'm going to talk about some of the other trainings that you all are going to have to do, but the finance training is one of the ones that is going to give you a comprehensive overview of what finance looks like for new student organizations and how to request funding from AU Club Council, things like that. So make sure that you check out that finance training, and then you'll be able to kind of piece it together if you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, Jordan. So purchase requests are is the system to actually buy the items and get approval from CSI to spend the money and buy the items, and that you work with our CSI finance team to do. And so some reminders are, first is that with the subject line, please make sure that you are using the vendor name and the event. So example I have here is like Amazon for winter welcome event. Make sure that you're not saying, Happiest Club purchase request, because then it's going to get canceled and you'll have to do it over again. Only one request per vendor. If you have more than one vendor, finance team will cancel your purchase request. And so that could look like if you're ordering for this winter welcome event, you're ordering Amazon supplies, Giant soda, and Domino's pizza. Each of those vendors should be a separate purchase request. So make sure that you submit it like that, okay? A request should only be submitted after your organization has received the funding. If you submit your purchase request before, it's going to be denied because we on our side see that you don't have any money, okay? And you have to have money to be able to spend money. And so make sure that for my AUCC groups that you're going through the AUCC budget request process, you're being approved by AUCC, and then you submit your purchase request with the items that you're looking to buy, okay? And then lastly here we have is that CSI is not responsible if your items don't arrive on time. So just make sure that you're planning accordingly. So especially for my groups who are ordering things from either not strange websites, but like a website that's not like Amazon that guarantees, 2-day or 3-day or something like that. If it's from a website that's like shipping in, 10 business days and you need it in 7, make sure that you're planning accordingly for when you put in that purchase request and when you are needing your items for your event. Generally, we say for about 2 weeks is the timeline that we need for you to be able to get a appointment with CSI Finance, get your items ordered, and then have them delivered to campus. And that delivery process looks like it comes to the mailroom first. The mailroom sorts it, and then they send it to us. So it can take a little bit of time to get your items, okay? So just make sure that you are planning accordingly and you're keeping in contact with the vendors and where it is in the shipment and things like that, so that you can get your things when you need them, All right, more about finance updates. So funding requests. So funding requests are only used when you have some sort of money that you want to deposit into your revenue account. So for my new clubs, you all have two accounts. You have a revenue account, and then if you're an AUCC group, you have an AUCC allocation account. All right, and AUCC allocation account is where money from you get from AUCC goes into. Your revenue account is any money that, like it says, you made from fundraising, someone donated some funds to your organization. Sorry, folks. Donated some funds to your organization, something like that. So if someone gives you a check and you need to put it in your revenue account, you would submit a funding request. And that allows the finance team to know, hey, we want to deposit some money. And then you will work with the finance team to drop off the check to our office, and then we'll work to get it into your revenue account. Okay. Lastly, reimbursements. So we do not reimburse. So make sure, again, I'm going to harp on this, plan accordingly for receiving funding and for purchasing items through CSI. For all of our student organizations, you have to purchase things through CSI if you're using any sort of student activity fee money. And so if you're trying to buy something through AUCC and then you like, AUCC, you took too long, I just bought it on my own, AUCC is not going to reimburse you. So just make sure that you're planning accordingly for your events, all right? All right, RSVPs and event check-in, event attendance, sorry. So harping on this too, because we really want to make sure that this is a focal point for this semester. So with your events and with the mess that is the pandemic, things constantly changing, new variants popping up, we need to know who actually attended your event, especially for in-person events, and because we need to know who was in the space, just in case something happens or someone tests positive for COVID, and we need to be able to do that, have that information to give to the COVID people at the university so they can do their contact tracing and let people know that they might have been in close contact with someone, okay? And so we've had a few situations last semester where students group had in-person events and no one took attendance. And then a few days later, somebody reached out and say, hey, I tested positive for COVID. I just wanted to let you know. And then they have to scramble to find who attended their event and give it back to us so that we can give it to I call them the COVID people. So you want to make sure that you're doing your work on the front end so you don't have to do it on the back end, so you don't have to worry about these things, okay? And here's two options for you. First option, and the easiest option for you, is to use our Campus Labs check-in app. And so when you submit your event on Engage and Rod or I approves it, we always have in our message, hey, make sure you're taking attendance. You can use the Campus Labs check-in app, and this is how you use it, okay? So pay attention to those responses that we give. And so this check-in app, it connects to your Engage page, all right? You can download the app with your, I don't know, iPhone, Android, whatever type of cellular device you have. And when people come to your event, you can scan their event pass. All AU students have an event pass. You can just scan their event pass, and then it'll be automatically uploaded that they attended your event. And so after your event, you don't have to do any back-end work. You don't have to input names. All you do is just download this check-in app, scan people in at your event, and then you're done. That's all you have to do. Simple and easy. Your second choice, which may have more work for you depending on what you're trying to do with this, is collecting your RSVPs however you want to do them. We suggest Engage, of course. Taking attendance at the event, however you want to do it. If you want to do, a check-in door with pen and paper, if you want to have people, I don't know, click into your link tree in your bio, in your Instagram, however you want to take attendance, however you want to do it. But we do ask that you submit the CSI event attendance form 3 days max post your event so that we know who was in the space at that time. Last semester, we didn't really harp on this, but this semester, with all the changing everything in our situations, we are going to harp on this because we need to know who attended and who was in that space, okay? So just make sure that you're doing one of the two. Additional training, so for my new clubs and my new executive board leaders who just came into leadership this semester, there are additional trainings that you're gonna have to do if you haven't done them already. So we do have an exec board essentials and an intro to Engage training, and then also a finance training. Those are webinars that we recorded in the fall. So all you have to do is watch that webinar. They're probably about an hour long and take about a 5-question quiz and then send that in to us. There's no due date for that, but we're going to ask you if you submit an event and we see that you haven't done the training yet, I'm going to say you need to do the training to make sure you're, all the way up. So just make sure you're getting that done this week before we get back to campus. That'll be your best bet. And then also all of my AUCC clubs. AUCC did, if you hear a dog, forgive her. She gets excited. We have an AUCC club orientation. AUCC did that yesterday at 5:30 and then today at 2:30. And so if you did not attend live, that is fine. They're going to record it and send it out to you. So just make sure that you are watching your email for a message from your club consultant. Well, they have that training and they talk through their updated funding principles, their updated timeline so that you can get some funding for your upcoming events, okay? All right, resources. So there is an AU student guide for January 2022, and we will drop that in the chat in a second. I really think that was just so students know about what the virtual January looks like. So feel free to check that out if you haven't already. Important university departments that you need to know. Again, we've been harping on it. University Center, EMS for scheduling space, CSI, you know us by now, and then your governance boards just for overall council leadership, okay? And so make sure that you are aware of these things. And then almost done, y'all, almost done, and then we'll open it up for questions. I'm just gonna quickly go through the timelines so that you'll be able to kind of see where you should be at in your process for either the 3-week community building initiatives or the 5-week complex events. So feel free to use this as a resource to map out your programming and where you should be and what you should be doing step by step, okay? So feel free to screenshot this. We also are gonna have this as a resource that we'll send out when I send out my next newsletter in the next week or so. So community building initiative timeline, 3 weeks. We already said it, minimum. So really step 1, you should be doing step 1 all at the same time. So that same week, go ahead and get all of these things done. So if you are requesting funding from the AU Club Council, go ahead and message your club consultant. All right, go ahead and connect with them and tell them, hey, we're trying to do this event. Also, go ahead and submit your budget request to AUCC. Okay, submit that so that you'll be in the timeline so they can review you and decide if they want to approve or deny or not. Sorry, y'all. Go ahead and secure your space on EMS if you haven't already. So you make sure that you already have your space. Hey, we got MGC 200. We're requesting 200 from AUCC and we're ready, okay? And then lastly, go ahead and submit your event on Engage. That alerts Rod and I that, hey, Happy's Club is trying to do something and we can provide the guidance necessary to get you on your way to having a successful event. Step 2, very, very simple. You've already submitted to AUCC. If you're trying to get funding, AUCC will either approve or deny your budget request, okay? If they deny, make sure that you're working and talking to your club consultant to revise your submission. It may be something as simple as, we can't get your t-shirts in time. Can you push your event date back or something like that? So make sure that you're having those conversations with them so you can get that funding. But if you are approved for your for your funding from AUCC, that's when you'll go ahead and submit your purchase request. And that starts the the purchasing process with CSI Finance. And CSI Finance will reach out to you to schedule a time to purchase your event, to purchase your materials for your event. So make sure that you have a watchful eye on your email, all right? Step 3, this is really event confirmation. You're pretty much done. CSI will reach out if we have any more information. Usually what we do is Rod and I will leave a comment on your Engage submission. So make sure that you're paying attention to that. We'll approve your event in Engage and it'll be uploaded to the system for everyone to see. You can start marketing and promoting it. You can edit your flyer, logistics, whatever you need to do to make sure that people know about your event. And then after your event, just complete those necessary action items I was talking about. So submit that form so we know who attended the event and who is actually breathing the same air as everyone. Complete the AUCC event evaluation form if necessary. AUCC will let you know. And then just watch your email from any communication from us if we have any questions or any lingering outstanding things we need to take care of. Complex event, same thing, but just a few extra steps, all right? Step 1 is exactly the same. Get all your things submitted at the same time, all right, in that same first week, 5 weeks out. Submit your budget request, connect with your AUCC club consultant if you need funding, get your space secured on EMS, and go ahead and submit your event on Engage to let CSI, Rod, and I know that, okay, you're trying to do something. Step 2, AUCC approved or denied. If you are approved, you'll have a complex event meeting with University Center and with your CSI advisor, where we'll go through logistics, any outstanding things you need to do. Just make sure that you're on the right track. All right. Once you have your funding from AUCC, go ahead and submit that purchase request. CSI Finance is going to begin that process and reach out to you to start getting your items ordered. If it's something like a contract, which takes a little bit longer, we're going to make sure that we have those correct signatures and that the appropriate people are signing the contracts. Again, we do not sign the contracts, so that's why it takes a little while. So just make sure that you're keeping an eye on your email. Step 3 is really making sure that you're squared away on your event logistics. So again, University Center might reach out and say, hey, let's have another meeting to chat to make sure that we're all clear on how you want your event set up. And then just keep in touch with CSI Finance to make sure, hey, contracts are being fulfilled, things are being purchased depending on what you need. Step 4, I'm sorry, I don't know why my screen keeps doing that, y'all. Step 4 is confirmation. So Rod and I will approve your event on Engage. You can go ahead and upload it, upload anything that you need to change, flyer, things like that. Start promoting it at this stage because it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And so begin advertising. Step 5, CSI and or AUCC or whoever your governance board is, we may do a final check-in just to make sure, hey, like, are you good? Are you ready? Anything outstanding? Do you need our help with anything? Just to make sure that you're ready. And usually this is about 1 week out from your event. And then go ahead and complete anything outstanding on your event checklist. And then after your event, same thing, complete your event evaluation form if necessary. Let us know who attended the event, and then just watch your email from any communication from us, all right?